All right. Project management using flywheels and workflows. And there's a particular concept I want to capture and introduce, and it's riding the wave. So I don't know if you've ever been out in the ocean, floating and trying to catch a wave to body surf or use a boogie board or anything like that, or a surfboard. If you've ever done that, you know that there's this point where at least I've had the experience where you think you're going to catch the wave, but you're paddling to catch up to it, but the force of the wave is just in front of you and you never quite catch it, and it kind of rolls on past you, and you can exert a tremendous amount of effort trying to catch up with that wave, but you're not at that point using the force of the wave, you're using your own power. There's a way of project managing that feels like that, where you're always behind the wave, but the flow of the project is not generating the energy. You're having to generate the energy, and I've certainly done a lot of project management that feels like that. There's another kind, and it's that moment when you're out in the ocean and you see the big wave coming, and you're in the right spot, and the wave, you may paddle a little bit with your arms or swim a little bit to generate a little bit of momentum. That's not always necessary. The wave picks you up and carries you along. So the energy difference between those two is what I'm talking about. Where is the energy coming from? And are you riding the wave, and then you're just kind of steering and using your power just to steer and direct and have a good time? Or are you right behind it, or way behind it, and getting swamped by the following waves when the project is actually way out in front of you and you're behind the whole time? And I've been in both places, and I've seen companies who live in that spot of so far behind there's no hope of catching up, and the waves that are crashing on top of them, their eye is on what's way up there, and they don't even see the next wave coming and tumbling them, getting them further behind. And I've seen that. But there's a different way to do project management, and this is one of the key elements of fractal productivity, that applying this principle to not just project development, but to your own personal planning. And I'm not going to explore that too much right now, but I'm just building this vocabulary a little bit to create some layers of thinking of what's in my mind as I'm developing fractal productivity. So the way I work, you guys in the Workflow user group know I work with flywheels and workflows. So the way I mentally picture that is, you've got this workflow, and it is everything that needs to happen from a project management perspective on the project. I was reading one of your comments on my phone. So a project starts, at contract signing, and then you've got to, figure out what materials and what the scopes of work are. You've got to line up your subs, and for me it was interior, like kitchen and bath remodeling. So you've got to go in and do the demo, and as a project manager, there are certain tasks that you have to do in order to manage that project. So you start out with one kitchen and you end with a different kitchen that meets the requirements of the contract you've signed. So that's that list of tasks, like schedule the plumber to do rough-in, like lay out the plumbing fixtures with the plumber and the homeowner, like go and pick up the electrical cans, rough-in kits for the electrician, like meet with the customer to decide about painting selections. So all of those are tasks, and there's hundreds, or depending on the size, there's hundreds or thousands of tasks involved in a kitchen remodel. And so all of those tasks are the workflow. You start at the end and you go to you start at the beginning and you go to the end, and then the project's done. Flywheels, which I have a project management workflow, which is a template that I use. That's all the tasks that a project manager and contractor has to do in order to do a project. I go in and modify that template for the project, subtract things that don't apply, add in some anomalies that do apply, some particular things I need to do, and then that's my workflow. The way I drive the workflow forward is a flywheel, my project management flywheel. So imagine this is a wheel with cogs and a handle on it, and that locks into the cogs on the workflow, and I give this a spin and it drives this workflow forward. So what they both are checklists. So this is a checklist of all the project management things I have to do on a project, and this is a set of 17 tasks that take about an hour to do. And I won't explain what they all are, but basically it's me engaging with the planning of the project and looking at the details. If it's taking the notes I've taken from meetings and processing those notes into my workflow and flywheel system, and into the customer communication system. It's updating Trello, how I communicate with my customers. It's updating my selection list as new selections come in for plumbing and electrical fixtures, for paint colors and that kind of thing. It's seeing who I need to contact to let them know, the plumber, if I'm a month out from needing him, I'll call him and say, hey, I'm a month out from needing you on this project. I'm keeping you informed. And so I've got this set of things I do, but I engage with those things by cranking on this list of things, which is basically process my notes, like in GTD format. I process my notes to decide what they mean to me. I put the notes and the information from the notes into my systems, so if in my notes I have 7 paint colors that they've selected, or if in those 7 paint colors, one of them they're not sure about and they want a sample, then I add to my workflow to get a sample of that paint color and put it on the wall. So I'm processing the workflow and I'm processing my information using my flywheel. Okay. When I do that, what happens is when I crank on this flywheel, after the first couple of times, that first time I'm having to generate the energy, I'm having to push on it. And when I first start the project, the first time I engage, that first day, if it's October 1st and I just signed a contract, the day before, and I'm cranking on this flywheel, I'm working on things having to do with that day and tomorrow and the next day. I'm getting the job going. So I'm kind of trying to get that engine started. And I'm having to push on it. And the things that I push on have to do with the moment that I'm working on. In other words, what do I need to do first? I need to contact my subcontractors to see if they're available, and I need to do that today. So the things that are on my list for now at the beginning of the project are the things I'm doing now. But also when I give that flywheel a spin, not only am I getting things started for the very beginning of the project, I'm looking down the road a little bit, and I'm starting to work on things for tomorrow and this coming week. So that first day, I'm working on things for today, and I'm also engaging with things that are coming up in the week or two following, and getting some momentum established for those things. So let's say this is a calendar, and it's each of these is, this is October, this is November, December, and January. Let's say it's a 4-month project. When I crank on this flywheel, the first day of October, I'm really working on things for that first week. But then when I re-engage with it the next day, the magic starts to happen. The wave starts to pick me up, because not only am I doing I've already done the work for the week, but as I re-engage on that second day, here's the first day of the project, here's the second day. Now I'm working on things for the upcoming 2 or 3 weeks. And then if I do it again the next day, I'm really working on things that are out several weeks. So I'm actually kind of mentally building the project, thinking through. By building the project, I mean thinking through exactly how am I going to put that shower together. I'm not doing that shower now. That's 3 weeks from now before I'm even starting. But Here I am 2 or 3 days in, and I'm thinking through what the problems are going to be out here, way into the project. And I solve it, and I solve the issues. I do maybe a detailed schematic and realize, oh, there's a problem right here. I need to talk to my tile guy to see how do you want to resolve it. So when I actually order the materials here in a couple of weeks for the work that's still a month out, I'm getting the right materials, and that's key. That's where you can start to ride the wave and not be behind it. What I've experienced all too often is trying to catch up to the wave is you haven't put in that effort. You haven't kind of pre-built that shower 2 or 3 times. You haven't laid it out in a schematic. You haven't rebuilt it with the tile guy and thought through the whole process with him. And then you think through it again with the materials list, and you think through it again when you're writing up the scope of work. So you've already been to that day 5, 6, 7, 8 times by the time you actually get there and the tile guy's on site. When you don't have the time to put that effort in with the project management flywheel to start working your way down through the project several times and thinking through all the problems, when you get to that day and you haven't talked to the tile guy, and then the issue presents itself, and then you don't have the material he needs, it delays the project. And then you have a frustrated subcontractor. You're taking, then I have to drive to Atlanta because that's the only place that material is in a factory that I can get access to. So that takes that whole day or two, plus delaying the job 2 or 3 days because the subcontractor pulls off and goes to another job. That's trying to catch up. But by building that day and already having been to that day and thought through, and I've got Gantt charts and Excel spreadsheets and all different kinds of ways that I can look at the different phases of the job and kind of pre-do the job. Many times I do it financially and look at it from a really in-depth financial perspective. I look at it from scheduling, so I do an in-depth Gantt chart. And then when I have the Gantt chart, one of the things, as an example, on my flywheel is to update my Gantt chart. So when I'm taking notes and I'd schedule the tile guy to be there on a certain day, and then I realize, I'm not going to be quite ready for him, or he can't be ready for me on that exact day, that day is still 3 or 4 weeks away, and I can start to adjust the Gantt chart. So I'm pre-building the project, and then I'm updating it using my flywheel, integrating all the new information I get each day into it. And so after I've done this flywheel and processed information in the way that I do, by the time I'm 3 weeks into a 4-month project, I've already built this project 4, 5, 6 times, adjusted it, edited it, tweaked it, made it a little better, seen ways I can be more efficient, resolved problems in a few minutes as opposed to in a few days. I've had times where I thought because I hadn't really spent the time, when the trim carpenter comes in and he needs 3 more 1x6 poplar clear stain grade boards, I actually have to drive to another city to get them. I've actually done that. So instead of it having been a couple of minutes to make sure I have a thorough materials list, it turns into a whole day that gets consumed. But by taking that time, when I actually get to that day, when I would have to go to Decatur to pick up the materials, I don't. I have an extra day that I can use to crank that flywheel again on this project or other projects. So riding the wave in terms of project management by pre-building, kind of like Groundhog Day. It feels kind of like Groundhog Day. When I'm doing a project and I'm riding the wave and I get to a day, it feels like I've already done it because I have. I've imagined it. I've looked at the details of who's going to be on the job site. I've looked at my Gantt chart and realized, okay, I've got my tile guy here, and my electrician is going to be trimming out here, and I can mentally work through what they're going to be doing and what materials they need. So when I'm riding that wave and the electrician comes, I've got, to trim out the light fixtures and stuff. All the boxes for all the fixtures are laid out in the right rooms. I've got a piece of paper that I hand him with a diagram of the job, and and the light, the product number for each light that goes where, with any specific requirements, like you need to line it up with this other fixture or whatever. And so when I actually have an electrician on site to do the trim out, it's like a 2-minute conversation. Instead of a 2-hour walking around resolving issues, the issues have already been resolved. And then when the inevitable issues do arise, as they will, I've got the margin. Because on this day, when the tile, for example, when the tile guy shows up, I don't have anything else particular to do. I'm not running to Decatur to pick up trim. I'm not in the middle of trying to solve problems for that day. I've got all the margin that I need to really thoroughly engage with the tasks of that day, with margin for if there's problems. And so so this is how, when I'm not in project management anymore, but when I'm running multiple projects, my focus is on the flywheel and working and like Groundhog Day, except in the future. You're planning. I've really experienced this where I get to a day and it's like I've already done it. And when a problem arises, I see the problem. I've already have a plan for if that problem arises because I've already thought through it. And so it reminds me of Michael Phelps, the swimmer. I was just awestruck by him and his athleticism and his capacity to swim. He was just an amazing athlete. And so I've read several articles on him and watched YouTube videos and stuff on him and his training regimen. But his coach, there's a couple things. His coach tells him to play the tape. And what he means by that is, before you go to bed, get yourself in your imagination into the water, on the dock, ready to dive in, and you swim the perfect race, and you feel the feelings in your muscles, and you feel mentally feel the water. And then when you wake up in the morning, that's the first thing, swim the perfect race. The most amazing thing I remember from Michael Phelps' Olympic career was when his goggles filled up with water, and he still won the race without being able to see anything. And he was acting a little strange and people were wondering, but he still won, and he gets out and he takes his goggles off, and he kind of, was upset and flung them down. And come to find out, he had won the race with his goggles filled with water. And somebody was interviewing him and said, "What was it like to swim with goggles filled with water?" He said, "Well, I've done it a lot of times before." Like he had intentionally pre-done that race many times by swimming with his goggles filled with water on purpose. So he had kind of already done that race with his goggles filled with water, and he'd already done that same race without the goggles filled with water, and he'd already done the same race when he missed diving off. And what was he going to do if he, got a slow start? He'd already swum the race, the perfect race, with all of the situations not being perfect around him. And he'd rehearsed and done it, and physically done it, and mentally done it. So by the time he got to that race and his goggles filled with water, he was on familiar territory. He'd already swum that race many, many times. So that's kind of what the kind of planning where you've already done all the phases, and you've already built in this case, the project management job many, many times over. So that's a principle. That's one of the main ideas that suddenly fell into place for me as far as fractal productivity goes. Is I realized I have more control now than I ever have of my work life, which gives me more control of my personal life. And it's the difference between being a project manager, where you are interacting and, in a sense, having to schedule around a bunch of other people, subcontractors and vendors, who are changeable, and they tell you they'll be there Monday, and then they don't show up Monday. They don't show up until Tuesday or Wednesday or Thursday, and you're having to scramble. So that's one of the reasons I got out of project management, was I was at the beck and call of too many people. and I was a good project manager, but it wasn't a great lifestyle for me. Now I'm doing my own work hands-on, and I'm in control. I decide when I get to the job. I just let the homeowner know. At the beginning of the job, I extract what information I need from the homeowner so I can do my job. And then they're not really any longer in control of my schedule. I just keep them informed and, meet the requirements of the contract, which then gives me more control over my personal schedule around my work week. So I realized, now that I have more control of my schedule than I ever have before, I can then pre-plan my weeks much more than I ever could. And I've started doing it, and it's been phenomenal, where I've actually pre-planned my day in more detail than most people will want to necessarily. I don't know how other people operate, but when I actually went to the level of detail that I naturally want to, things snapped into place for me in a lot of ways. And so with the painting company, instead of just saying I'm going to do some work today, I very explicitly kind of crank the flywheel. I look at the upcoming day, and that's as far as I've taken it, was looking at the upcoming day and planning it in a lot of detail, not just prep walls, but everything that goes into prepping the walls. So last week I was getting ready to spray paint trim with my airless sprayer, and I got there and made a list of everything I need to do, then put a timestamp because I knew I was going to be working late that day, which I wanted to because the homeowners were gone, so I was wanting to maximize my time. And so I pre-planned the day. I made a list of all the things that needed to be done. So that was and I walked around the job site mentally figuring out. So I was kind of doing it one time in kind of planning and compilation phase. And then I did it again by ordering everything in the most efficient order I could. So I'd already done it twice. Walked around again, thinking through doing it in that format. And then by the time I was actually doing the work, I'd already done it 2 or 3 times. Solved some issues, reordered things so I wasn't doing things out of order. So I'm realizing, okay, with my work, I can really not just kind of manage other people, but I can manage myself, and like Groundhog Day, kind of do it 2 or 3 times so I can get better. And in Groundhog Day, of course he goes through his wacky times, but, on towards the end, he's actually taking the knowledge from the previous times he's lived that day and applying it to the day he's currently living in, and doing things better and better and better. And I can simulate that by the kind of flywheel and workflow systems applied not only to project management, but also to my own work, and then also to my own day. So that's a taste of what I'm driving at, and a piece of what I'm working on. So there you go. Ride the wave, project management, flywheels, seeing deeper and deeper and deeper, further and further in. Every time you crank on this flywheel, you're working your way further down the road, and getting more momentum, and living the days further out many, many times over by the time you get there. So there you go. There's another layer to it.